Imagine going to the doctor with a torn hamstring,
Right.
and their professional medical advice is to just immediately go out and run sprints.
Yeah, you would think they were absolutely crazy.
Exactly. I mean, it goes against literally every instinct you have about how to heal the body.
Right.
But uh, for thousands of women experiencing pelvic floor issues right now, that is exactly the kind of backwards advice they're receiving every single day.
It really,
You go to a clinic complaining about, a bit of leaking when you sneeze or maybe some deep pelvic pressure, and you just get handed a generic pamphlet.
the infamous pamphlet.
Yeah. And it just says, just do your Kegels. It's treated as this universal, undisputed prescription. Just squeeze, release, repeat.
Right, like a magic cure-all.
Exactly. But what if that generic advice is actually making things worse? I mean,
Right.
what if doing exactly what the pamphlet says is the equivalent of like throwing gasoline on a fire?
It's a terrifying thought, honestly, especially when the medical establishment treats Kegels as a one-size-fits-all solution.
Yeah.
But for a specific, remarkably common subset of the population, that pamphlet is actually really harmful.
And today's deep dive focuses squarely on that group. We're talking about women with hypermobility.
Yes.
Conditions like hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, or HEDS, and
Yeah.
hypermobility spectrum disorders, or HSD.
Right.
Our core mission today is to answer a surprisingly complex question for you. Are pelvic floor exercises fundamentally different for hypermobile women?
Spoiler alert, they absolutely are.
Yes. And the reasons why will completely change how you view your own body's mechanics.
So to figure this out, we're synthesizing some really dense but super compelling material today.
Definitely.
We aren't just looking at standard advice. We've dug into clinical guidelines from NISTO, that's the National Institute for Health and Care Excellence, along with protocols from specialized NHS trusts.
Plus, research papers on connective tissue disorders, right?
Exactly. And the clinical notes of expert pelvic health physiotherapists.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because before we can even begin to understand why the exercises themselves have to change, we have to kind of look under the hood.
We do.
We need to understand what hypermobility actually does to the body's internal architecture, because it is so much more than what we, just see on the outside.
What's fascinating here is that hypermobility is so often dismissed by the general public as just a quirk.
Like a party trick.
Exactly. People hear the word and immediately picture like a kid who is double jointed or someone who can bend their thumbs all the way back to their wrists.
Or drop into the splits without even warming up.
Right. But it's not a party trick. It is a systemic, fundamental difference in the body's connective tissue. Specifically, we're talking about collagen.
Body's biological glue.
That is the perfect way to describe it, actually. Collagen is the raw structural material holding everything in your body together.
Okay.
It gives your skin its firmness, it forms your tendons, and crucially for our conversation today, it makes up the ligaments that provide passive stability to your joints and your internal organs.
Right.
But in someone with HEDS or HSD, that collagen is built on a faulty genetic blueprint. It just doesn't have the normal tensile strength.
So it's like overly elastic.
Very overly elastic. And crucially, it is far less resilient.
Wow. Okay, I'm trying to visualize this in the context of the pelvis. If we look at the pelvic floor, it is essentially a hammock, right?
Yes, that's a great analogy.
It's this intricate, multi-layered sling of muscles and connective tissue that stretches from the pubic bone at the front all the way back to the tailbone.
Exactly.
And it is holding up some pretty heavy internal cargo. I mean, the bladder, the bowel, the uterus.
That's a lot of weight.
Right. So if the structural ropes of this hammock, the ligaments, are made of stretchy, faulty bungee cords instead of sturdy, thick ropes, doesn't that mean everything just essentially falls down?
Well, that is the logical assumption.
Yeah.
And to be clear, sagging certainly does happen.
Yeah.
That lack of structural integrity is exactly why we see issues like pelvic organ prolapse, where the organs descend because the connective tissue simply cannot suspend them against gravity.
Which sounds incredibly painful.
It is. But we have to remember that the human body is a highly adaptive survival machine.
Right.
When those ligaments fail to provide that necessary passive stability, your central nervous system realizes the entire skeletal structure of your pelvis and lower back is in danger of shifting out of place.
Oh, wow. So it panics.
It absolutely panics. It knows the foundation is loose.
So what does it do?
It calls in a backup team. If the passive stabilizers, the ligaments, can't do the job, the nervous system drafts the active stabilizers to take over.
Meaning the muscles.
Yeah, exactly. It recruits the pelvic floor muscles. The brain sends a constant signal demanding those muscles contract, grip, and hold the skeleton and the organs together.
That sounds exhausting.
It is. Those muscles basically end up moonlighting as ligaments.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Because if those muscles are working absolute overtime, it completely flips the script on the symptoms these women are experiencing.
Totally.
We looked at the statistics and the sources, and they are staggering. Women with hypermobility have roughly a twofold increase in the odds of experiencing pelvic organ prolapse.
Yes.
And the pain levels are off the charts. One international survey found that 64% of women with HEDS reported dyspareunia.
Which is severe pain during sex.
Right, 64%. That's huge.
Those numbers paint a clear picture of a pelvic floor that is in a state of severe distress, mostly because it's trapped in a state of sustained, low-grade guarding.
But wait, I'm losing you here. This is the central paradox for me.
Okay, lay it out.
If a muscle is constantly contracted, working 24/7 to hold the skeleton together, shouldn't it be incredibly strong?
You think so, right?
Yeah, like a bodybuilder who is constantly lifting weights and flexing. Why do hypermobile women so often experience symptoms of weakness, like leaking urine when they laugh or sneeze?
It's a really common misconception.
I mean, if the muscle is gripped like a vice, how is anything slipping through?
That assumption right there is what we call the Kegel trap. You're confusing hypertrophy with hypertonicity.
Okay, break that down for me.
Sure. A bodybuilder lifting a weight is going through a dynamic range of motion, building strength. That's hypertrophy.
Right.
But what's happening in the hypermobile pelvic floor is hypertonicity. The muscles are locked in a relentless isometric spasm, just trying to hold the pelvis together.
Oh, I see.
They aren't strong.
Yeah.
They are profoundly exhausted.
Ah, so it's not weakness, it's total fatigue.
Exactly. Think about holding a heavy dumbbell in a bicep curl, but just holding it halfway up.
Okay.
Not moving, just holding it there for 12 hours. Your bicep isn't weak, but it is so deeply fatigued that if someone suddenly tossed you a medicine ball, your arm would simply give out.
You drop it.
You'd absolutely drop it.
Yeah.
The pelvic floor operates the exact same way.
That makes so much sense.
It's so utterly exhausted from this relentless subconscious guarding that when a sudden high-pressure demand occurs, like the massive downward force of a sneeze, the muscle has zero reserve capacity.
It just can't tighten anymore.
It literally cannot contract any faster or tighter to close the urethra. So you leak.
Wow. And that brings us right back to the terrifying medical advice. You leak. So you go to the doctor and they hand you the pamphlet that says, do your Kegels, squeeze.
Which is literally throwing gasoline on the fire.
Right.
A Kegel is a deliberate, active contraction. Treating a hypertonic, exhausted, spasming muscle by commanding it to contract more is like, well, it's like taking a rubber band that is already stretched to its absolute breaking point.
And trying to pull it even tighter.
Exactly.
It's just going to cause more pain and dysfunction. It's going to make the painful sex worse. It's going to trigger chronic constipation because the muscles refuse to relax to let anything out.
Right.
And it drives urinary urgency. The muscle is screaming for a break.
It is begging to be put down, and the standard medical playbook is telling it to work a double shift.
It's infuriating, but it raises a huge question.
What's that?
If the root cause is that the muscles are just too tight, why can't a hypermobile woman simply sit down, take a deep breath, and actively choose to relax her pelvic floor?
It sounds so simple, right?
Yeah. I mean, if I notice my jaw is clenched, I can consciously unclench it. Why is the pelvic floor so stubborn?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, we have to look at the nervous system's role, specifically a neurological concept called proprioception.
That's our internal spatial map, right? Like how I know where my foot is without looking at it.
Precisely. Proprioception relies on sensory receptors hidden inside your connective tissue.
Okay.
When a normal ligament stretches, those receptors fire off a crisp, high-definition signal to the brain, telling it exactly what position the joint is in.
Makes sense.
But in hypermobility, because the collagen is overly stretchy and faulty, those receptors don't fire correctly. The signal sent back to the brain is fuzzy. It's like having a bad cell phone connection.
So the brain's internal map of the body becomes fundamentally blurry.
Yes. And because the pelvic floor is tucked away internally,
Yeah.
you can't see it to verify what it's doing, the brain essentially loses its map of the area altogether.
Oh, wow.
It doesn't even realize the muscle is locked in a spasm, so it never sends the chemical signal to release it.
There was a clinical anecdote in the sources that
Mhm.
illustrates this so
Like
vividly.
the biofeedback one?
Yes. A physiotherapist was treating a hypermobile patient, and she used a biofeedback machine. For
Right.
anyone listening who doesn't know, this involves placing sensors on or near the pelvic floor muscles that send an electrical reading to a computer monitor.
Right.
So the patient can physically see a graph of her muscle activity in real time.
A literal visual representation of the tension.
Exactly. And the patient looked at the screen and just burst out laughing
Yeah.
because the graph was spiking off the charts. It was registering a massive, intense muscle contraction.
But she didn't feel it.
Not at all. The patient swore she felt entirely 100% relaxed.
She literally could not feel her own tension. The sensory feedback loop was completely severed.
And when the therapist asked her to actively contract, to try and make the line on the graph jump, the line barely registered a bump.
Because she was already maxed out.
She was already at her absolute maximum tension. But wait, how does looking at a screen actually fix that severed connection?
It leverages neuroplasticity. Because the internal connective tissue isn't sending the right signals, the brain needs a workaround.
Okay.
By looking at the screen, the patient's visual cortex takes over. Her brain sees the line spike, and her frontal lobe says, "Oh, I am clenching."
That's fascinating.
It uses the visual cue to forge a brand new neural pathway, slowly teaching the brain how to find, feel, and eventually release that hidden muscle group.
That is incredible. The brain is literally rewiring itself around the faulty collagen.
It has to. And we haven't even touched on the other massive neurological hurdle here.
Autonomic dysfunction.
Exactly.
Right, dysautonomia. We see this co-occurring with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome constantly. Conditions like POTS, postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome.
They go hand in hand.
Yeah.
The autonomic nervous system controls everything you don't consciously manage.
Yeah.
Heart rate, blood pressure, digestion.
Automatic stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
In a typical body, this system balances your fight or flight sympathetic responses with your rest and digest parasympathetic responses.
Okay.
But let's look at the biology of POTS in a hypermobile body. When you stand up, gravity pulls your blood downward. Normally, your blood vessels constrict to push the blood back up to your brain.
Right.
But remember, blood vessels are made of collagen too.
Oh, wow. Wait, so the blood vessels are overly stretchy as well?
Yes. So instead of constricting, they stretch. The
Yeah.
blood pools in the legs. The brain realizes it isn't getting enough oxygen, so it panics.
Another panic response.
Like, it dumps massive amounts of adrenaline into your system to force the heart to race and pump that blood upward.
Which leaves the person flooded with adrenaline just from, standing up.
Exactly. They are trapped in a chronic state of sympathetic nervous system overdrive. Their brain is constantly acting like they're in a dark alley being chased by a predator.
That sounds miserable.
And what does your body do when it braces for impact? It tenses up, it pulls the knees in, it guards the abdomen, and it tightly clenches the pelvic floor.
Of course it does.
It is practically impossible to ask those deep pelvic muscles to relax when the entire autonomic nervous system is screaming that you are in mortal danger.
So what does this all mean for actual treatment? If you're sitting there listening to this and you've always had unexplained stomach issues or a racing heart or joints that pop out of place, this is where your ears should really perk up.
Absolutely.
Because your nervous system might be running this exact defensive playbook. How on earth do physical therapists treat this? If Kegels are banned, what is the protocol?
It requires ripping up the pamphlet and completely rewriting the rehab rulebook. The fundamental, non-negotiable first rule is that down training must happen long before any strengthening can even be considered.
Down training, meaning deliberately teaching the muscle to stand down from high alert.
Precisely. You have to teach the muscle how to lengthen, how to yield, and how to rest. If you try to strengthen a hypertonic, spasming muscle, you don't get a strong muscle.
You just get a tighter one.
You just get a tight, angry muscle that is even closer to failing.
But you just said you can't just tell a panicked nervous system to chill out. So what are the actual mechanical tools they use to downtrain it?
One of the most powerful interventions we saw across all the literature is highly specific breath work. And I don't mean just taking a deep breath to calm your nerves.
Right.
We are talking about the biomechanics of 360-degree diaphragmatic breathing.
The sources were incredibly specific about this. It isn't just pushing your belly out when you inhale, right?
No, not at all.
It's about expanding your entire rib cage outward in all directions, like a 360-degree expansion.
That expansion is crucial because the respiratory diaphragm and the pelvic floor are neurologically and mechanically linked. They operate together like a piston inside a cylinder.
Oh, I like that visual.
When you take a proper diaphragmatic inhale, the diaphragm descends. This mechanically pushes the internal abdominal organs downward, which in turn places a gentle, yielding pressure on the pelvic floor.
Okay.
It forces those clenched muscles to subtly stretch and lengthen. Then on the exhale, everything naturally recoils upward.
It's like giving your own pelvic floor a gentle rhythmic massage from the inside out.
It really is. And neurologically, a slow, controlled exhale stimulates the vagus nerve, which is the primary driver of your parasympathetic nervous system.
The rest and digest part.
Exactly. It literally acts as a biological brake pedal, shutting off the adrenaline dump and telling the brain, we are safe, you can stop guarding.
But doing 10 minutes of breathing exercises isn't going to fix anything if you spend the other 23 hours of the day blowing out your nervous system.
Well, absolutely not.
Which brings us to the next massive intervention, pacing. The source has hammered home the importance of avoiding the boom and bust cycle.
The boom and bust cycle is the absolute enemy of the hypermobile body. It's what happens when you wake up having a good day with low pain, so you decide to capitalize on it.
Right, you do all the things.
You do all your chores, you run errands, you do a heavy workout, pushing yourself to 110%. But because your connective tissue is inefficient, that effort costs you twice as much energy.
And then comes the bust.
The next day, you experience the bust. You crash completely. Your fatigue is debilitating, the pain flares up, and crucially, your nervous system interprets that crash as a massive threat.
Sending the pelvic floor right back into a severe spasm.
Exactly.
So a key part of physical therapy is behavioral. Teaching the patient to artificially hold themselves back on the good days, maintaining a steady, predictable baseline of activity.
Because predictability creates a sense of safety in the nervous system. But pacing your physical activity isn't enough if you're undoing all that hard work every time you use the bathroom.
Yes. The connection between the gut and the pelvic floor was highlighted over and over in the literature.
It's so important.
Because that stretchy collagen doesn't just affect your joints and veins, it makes up the walls of your digestive tract as well. So the gut itself is often sluggish.
Right. And when you combine a sluggish, slow-moving digestive tract with a hypertonic pelvic floor that is locked shut and refusing to open the exit door, you end up with chronic, severe constipation.
And how do most people react to constipation?
They hold their breath and they bear down. They strain.
Which is catastrophic for a hypermobile pelvis.
Complete.
Straining creates intense downward intra-abdominal pressure against a pelvic floor that is already struggling to hold things in place. You are literally forcing your organs downward, drastically accelerating the risk of pelvic organ prolapse.
So the intervention isn't just taking a laxative. It is mechanically altering how you sit on the toilet to bypass the clenched muscle.
Okay, explain the mechanics of that.
We have to look at the anatomy of a specific muscle called the puborectalis. This muscle acts like a literal lasso or sling looped around your lower colon.
Okay, a lasso.
When you are standing up, or when you are sitting on a standard toilet at a 90-degree angle, that lasso is pulled tight. It kinks the colon, much like kinking a garden hose to stop the water flow.
To keep things in.
Exactly. It's a mechanism to keep you continent.
So if you are sitting normally and trying to go, you are fighting against your own internal lasso.
You are. But if you elevate your knees above your hips using a step stool or something like a squatty potty, you mechanically change the angle of your pelvis into a deep squat.
Right.
In that specific position, the puborectalis muscle naturally slackens. The lasso loosens, the kink in the hose straightens out, and the stool can exit without the need for you to actively bear down, push, and damage your pelvic floor.
It's pure biological engineering. We are changing the physical angles to relieve the neurological pressure.
It's brilliant.
Now, if a patient successfully does all of this, they use biofeedback to rebuild the map, they use breath work to downtrain the nervous system, they pace their energy, and they optimize their bowel mechanics. Can they finally do a Kegel? Can they finally strengthen?
They can strengthen, but with a massive asterisk attached.
Okay.
Because of the systemic hypermobility, any strengthening protocol must be incredibly slow and highly focused on joint alignment. You can't just jump into heavy squats or generic Pilates.
Right, because everything is still unstable.
Exactly. If the surrounding joints, the hips, the SI joint, the lower spine aren't perfectly stabilized in a neutral position before you move, your brain will sense the instability and immediately trigger the pelvic floor to go right back into its panic guarding state.
It sounds like an incredibly delicate tightrope walk, which completely proves why you cannot just hand these women a generic one-size-fits-all pamphlet.
It requires a highly individualized, Sherlock Holmes-level approach from a specialized pelvic health physiotherapist,
Mm.
someone who understands that they aren't just rehabbing a weak muscle.
They're treating an exhausted connective tissue matrix and a terrified nervous system all at once.
Perfectly said.
So if you take away anything from this deep dive, let it be this. If your body isn't responding to the standard advice, it doesn't mean you are failing. It means the advice wasn't built for your unique biological blueprint.
Exact.
The pain, the tightness, the fatigue, it really reframes how you look at chronic pain. It isn't your body attacking you or fundamentally breaking down. It is your nervous system working absolute overtime, doing everything in its power to keep you structurally put together.
It is a profound shift in perspective. It forces us to view symptoms not as dysfunctions, but as deeply intelligent, albeit exhausting overcompensations.
Yeah.
And it leaves me with a final thought for us to ponder. We've spent this entire time unpacking how the physical body will unconsciously and relentlessly clench its deepest internal muscles just to hold loose physical joints together.
Right. It will literally exhaust itself just to maintain a baseline of stability. It really makes you wonder, if our physiological systems are that eager to overcompensate and silently carry the burden of physical instability, what other hidden emotional or psychological instabilities are our deep internal muscles quietly carrying right now, completely beneath our conscious awareness?
Wow. That is a fascinating question. Our bodies are doing so much invisible work just to keep us upright. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. The next time you hear someone casually offer the standard advice to just do your Kegels, you will know the reality of the human body is infinitely more complex and far more protective than a generic pamphlet could ever capture. Until next time.